Right. Thank you all very much for joining. This is our space, and we're going to have an honest conversation about NGO CSW, the success of NGO CSW65, the impact that it's had on the feminist movement, the past, the present, and our hopes for the future. Hopefully everyone can introduce yourselves in the chat. And just a little housekeeping, I just wanted to let you know that this would run for approximately 90 minutes, and there will be a series of interviews, 6 or 7 of them actually, in full, where we will be talking with each other. We work as a team often in different spaces, and this is our chance to reflect here at the Mexico GEF Forum on passing the baton, what we want for the future, where we can insert ourselves to make change for women all over the world. Please feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I ask that you raise your hand because there's quite a few of us here. If you raise your hand, your question will certainly be addressed. And with that, let us jump right into our conversation, and I will pass the floor to Rosa Lizarde, who will give us a welcome in Spanish. Thank you. Rosa, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, Trisha. Buenos días, buenas tardes y muy buenas noches. Un caluroso saludo a todas, todos y todes por parte del Comité Ejecutivo de las ONGs, de la Comisión de la Condición Jurídica y Social de la Mujer, o sea, el CSW por sus siglas en inglés. Yo soy Rosa Lizarde, miembro del Comité Ejecutivo de la ONG CSW de Nueva York, y les doy la bienvenida a nuestra sesión durante el foro Generación Igualdad en la bella Ciudad de México, México lindo y querido. Como saben, la CSW65 acaba de terminar en las Naciones Unidas en Nueva York, igual que nuestro foro de ONGs CSW. 2 semanas de más de 700 sesiones donde participaron más de 25,000 participantes. El éxito de este foro da reconocimiento histórico a la contribución de las ONGs, el movimiento de mujeres, el movimiento feminista, a las 4 conferencias mundiales de igualdad de género y derechos de las mujeres que empezaron en México en 1975 y que culmina en estos eventos históricos del Foro Generación Igualdad. El foro de ONGs abordó los temas de salud y derechos sexuales y reproductivos, movimientos y liderazgos feministas, la violencia contra las mujeres, justicia y derechos económicos, asuntos de lésbicos, gay, bisexuales, trans, comunidades queer, mujeres y jóvenes, paz y seguridad, acción feminista por la justicia climática y diálogos de antirracismo. Todos los temas nos conectan con la agenda de Beijing +25 y debemos seguir luchando para avanzar los derechos de las mujeres y niñas e igualdad de género. Y por eso estamos aquí virtualmente en el foro y en México, mi querida tierra de mi familia, en este foro Generación Igualdad. De nuevo, les quiero dar la bienvenida. Aquí tenemos un comité, unas amigas, colegas lindas que nos van a presentar hoy. Entonces, adelante. Muchas gracias por estar con nosotras. Tricia.
Gracias, Rosa. La lucha continúa. Gracias por este mensaje. Okay, moving on. We would like to share with you a compilation of the work that was done. It's so hard to get your hands around 2 weeks of energy and years of advocacy, but we've done our best. And with that, I will hand the floor over to Soon Young Yoon, who will share a video with us that she has curated to share with you some of the work of NGO CSW. The floor is yours to share the video.
I think I think the video of CSW is in your library. Could you share it? I don't have it.
Okay, that's no problem.
Okay.
I have the 5-minute version. If I pulled at the library, I'd have to go to a different system. The way that it works, I can't run Zoom on both. So I have the 5-minute version. Is that suitable? Is that fine?
That would be great.
Okay, so
if
let me go ahead and
if Devin has the longer one, that would be even better. But
let's see here. Hold on a minute.
it's a great compilation of what happened over 2 weeks. Here's your 2-week version in 60 minutes. So just 60 seconds.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's have the sound. You'll have to.
Can you hear the sound?
No, there's no sound. Yeah, you just have to on the share screen. You have to click the allow sound, and I think that may show up.
All right, so let me start that again.
Okay.
We will have to. There we go. Sorry, my mistake.
That's okay.
Again.
Here we go. Back to CSW. 25,000 people.
Welcome to NGO CSW Virtual Forum. Welcome to a new world of advocacy and action. Here we are after years of gathering women's voices at the Commission on the Status of Women at United Nations. We agreed to go fully virtual with our forum due to the pandemic. How can we recreate the energy that happens when women gather? That is up to all of us. We know one of the most effective gatherings in our advocacy happened 25 years ago at the 4th World Conference on Women in Beijing. It changed how gender equality was addressed in so many ways. Now we have an opportunity to recreate it.
Between two famous people, I think you know them.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Huri, and thank you to the colleagues for inviting me to be part of this conversation. Indeed, this CSW session this year will be going also mostly virtual, and since it has been the largest gathering of the NGO community also at UN, it's unfortunate that we will not be seeing each other in person, but I'm very excited to learn that there are around 20,000 participants virtually.
Thank you, Ambassador, for kickstarting this CSW week with the wise words and spelling out our homework these coming 2 weeks. My message to colleagues in civil society is please make sure that you are there virtually to accompany the negotiations as you do always. Let's find a way of making sure that the presence of civil society is felt. The Vienna
There's a mountain that stands before us, towering and intimidating. It daunts the possibility of equality. There's a mountain that stands before us that allows Black girls like me to dream of the moments where we strive to one day climb that mountain and reach the top. There's a mountain that stands before us, yet only some are lucky enough to climb. Only some have the advantage to reach the top. In the distance, a light beams off the top of the mountain. We get a first glance, a first chance to believe that we can reach the peak.
CSW monitors and reviews progress and problems in the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and the Beijing Platform for Action, which 25 years on is still the most progressive policy document we have globally for the rights of women and girls. Something
We will be having around eight people per breakout room, and we will be discussing the questions that are currently on the PowerPoint. Please do select someone to take notes. We hope that everyone from this will have an increased understanding of the issues that we're discussing today. And we hope that everyone
our first region to speak about their work. And we're just going alphabetical order. So Africa region, please unmute yourself. Please put yourself on camera and tell us how you work and how we collaborate. Thank you.
Africa. So the way we work really is each year we work together with the UN Economic Commission for Africa as well as UN Women in terms of putting together the civil society Africa position according to the theme of CSW. So this year we did that. We had a consultation with members from across the region. We had about 600 registrations, and out of those, the meeting that we now had close to 300 people from all the regions in all diversities were able to support and attend.
That we still faced so many challenges. We still have so many issues in front of us. At the global level, we still have violence. And COVID, as Lopa told, revealed a lot of weak structural barriers to address the violence. We see inequalities, climate emergency, pandemic recovery. If you have ECOSOC consultative status, you can register, you can participate, you can submit written statements, you can organize parallel events, and there are quite a number of opportunities to be a part of this process.
Feminist movements and leadership in the time of COVID-19. I personally think our topic is great because it is so linked to what we are seeing today. And the COVID-19 pandemic, as we all know, has done extraordinary things, both in terms of emphasizing our transnational global solidarity and the impacts that a pandemic can bring on all of us. It's also had really devastating impact on women and girls in particular in all parts of life. From
this space, as you know, was designed for persons to come together to raise ideas and exchange ideas actually on specific topics. And today's topic is excuse me, anti-human trafficking, and it's a broad topic. So we break out into several breakout sessions or breakout rooms with my fellow co-hosts. At this
I commend the scriptwriter and the outstanding cast for so vividly depicting the brutality and devastation of sexual violence in conflict. The trauma captured in this play is sadly as relevant today in 2021 as it was 11 years ago when the play originally opened in 2010, and just 1 year after the creation of my mandate by the UN Security Council. Yet sexual violence is not an inevitable byproduct of war. It is preventable.
Is Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, founded in 1908 on the campus of Howard University, a historically Black university in the United States. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated boasts over 300,000 members in over 50 countries. Members include the former president of Liberia, Dr. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, famed writer Toni Morrison, and the current Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala D. Harris.
Hello, everyone. My name is Azadeh Khalili, and I want to give you a warm greeting from New York City. A warm greeting to every one of you. Welcome to the Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights Conversation Circles. This circle is sponsored by the NGO CSW New York. As I said, I am Azadeh.
fue, güey. Remenéate, remenéate. Remenéate, remenéate, que fue, güey. Bailando.
Desde la tierra del maíz y Shimuleo. Este es el canto por una generación, igualdad desde el respeto a la diversidad. Y esto dice... Ehuna maja kuchiri kacha el chukari katzig yalan ni katzin. Hochbeten nekrikin kashe el. Hochbeten nekrikin kuchukari kin kana och akuchiri katitski yakari kikush. Ichin roch mupil ashnakil kaslemal. Ashnakil.
Really moved. I have the privilege of working in UN Women in Mexico with my friend Nadine and the Mexican government and with civil society from Mexico who have made possible that we have this Generation Equality Forum. And all I can say is that we receive the message, the Mexico, here we come. It's like you sent us the paper, the piece of paper, I take it here. And from UN Women Mexico, in coordination with our partners here, we will do our best for this Generation Equality Forum to be a vibrant moment, to be a moment where we can listen to each other, where we can raise the bar and the voices.
Thank you all so much. It seems like that was 2 years ago, but really it was about a week ago. And it's really quite moving to see that, especially having been involved in it at such a intimate level. And so to that end now, we're going to move into the details. And I'm going to hand the floor over to Huri and Galen, and they're going to have a conversation about why did so many people have such an interest in NGO CSW65? And what do you think the role is and hopes? They're going to dig down deeper into it. And so, Huri, Galen, the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Galen, and I'm so happy to introduce Huri, the current chair of NGO CSW New York. Huri has worked with various UN member states and UN Women to bring change through different projects and panel discussions. And we're so happy she's with us today. Huri, why do you think 25,000 people showed up at the NGO CSW Forum?
Colleen, it's so good to see you. I remember when I first met you as an intern, and I'm so happy to see you involved. And actually, I can turn the table and say, why are you still involved? And I think that's one of the reasons so many people are gathering. But to really answer seriously, first of all, watching that 10-minute video was just so overwhelming and emotional. I don't think any of us, my team, our global planning committee, has even had time to process what it is that we put together. And I think the one thing I can say, and then just expand on it a little bit, is that, you know, women rise up. Women rise up when they see the need to speak up, to do something. And I think COVID actually proved that to us, right? I mean, it's not us saying this, it's governments, and it's even patriarchy admitting that women are the frontline workers and the nurses that kept rising up to deliver, to help whenever there was a crisis. And I want to make that connection to what happened with NGO CSW. I think, first of all, the idea that we did go on 100% virtual, and we kind of announced that early enough that the voice traveled through many parts of the world, right? The call for action had time to travel throughout our regions and our activists. But I have to be honest, I mean, personally, and I believe on my executive committee and the global planning committee, we didn't realize it was going to be such a huge turnout. We kept thinking, okay, maybe 10, because that's what we had last year, maybe 15. And then when we reached 20, we were like, okay, that's it, we have to stop. But we really couldn't stop because we had 700 events and we had to allow people to come and watch these, participate in these events. So I think it is really credit to women advocates and women and girls activists And I want to highlight the girls, and hopefully later on everybody sticks around to hear from our YLYP, because that also is very important. We haven't done the numbers yet, so this is just, you know, anecdotal, but my feeling is that from those polls that we were doing throughout the 2 weeks, majority were new advocates, meaning youth, hopefully, and also at any age, right? So I think that also says something about how we have an opportunity now to say, wait a minute, the voices are out there. And of course, as we know, NGO CSW's mandate is to bring voices of women and girls to UN. And they're making themselves heard. So now we as NGO CSW have the responsibility to step back, rethink, and say, what can we do to keep not only the momentum going, but to actually make a difference in the way we do advocacy? And I'm sorry if I'm like blending in a lot of ideas, because you just pushed a button in me. and I see how these are all connected, because, you know, the fact that we're in Mexico City right now for Generation Equality Forum is quite interesting when you think about it. It's because CSW in some ways had failed us. We kept advocating, we kept asking, we kept you know, doing all our research, and just like you saw in the video, all regions gathered information and brought it to UN, and UN basically gave us lip service in some way, saying, yeah, we'll do this, and really not implementing. So Generation Equality Forum was established to really combat that. So it's important to note that there was some failure at CSW, and I, as NGO CSW chair, take that very seriously and say, what can we do differently that our advocacy can actually bring results? So the numbers are really important, and I'm glad we have the numbers, but that's not enough. You know, we proved to ourselves that we can bring numbers together. So what do we do next? How do we really galvanize to make sure that we do make change? So what do you think, Galina?
Well, like you said, it's really special this year, since especially since so much has happened in the past year, and we as women, we challenge norms every day, but we also inspire each other every day. And I still think we have a lot of work ahead of us, and I hope we continue to inspire each other, and I hope we continue to fight for our place in the world. And I hope this chapter takes us to a more equal world. And following up on what you said, what is the role of NGO CSW New York in this forum, and what are your hopes going into this forum in Mexico?
Excellent follow-up, because there's a couple of things that I touched upon that I want to make sure that we unpack a little bit more. So the virtual platform obviously gave us an opportunity to gather globally, right? It also obviously helped us bring our sisters in the region. So we've always had a planning committee that was New York based. We have some amazing advocates that have done amazing work with us organizing past CSWs. But the virtual made it really clear that we needed to bring our sisters in the region, Africa, Asia, Middle East. And so our global planning committee were actually the co-chairs of our NGO CSWs in the regions. And that was something that I think we always wanted to do, but weren't sure how to pull it off. And we did pull it off. I think and obviously that was key in gathering the voices, right? And new voices as well. So I think what will be really interesting, and honestly, right now, just having just finished the forum, I'm inspired, I'm excited, but I'm also anxious about how do we really hone in this energy, and how do we move forward with this global movement? Because NGO CSW/New York is NGO CSW/New York. We don't own the world, right? We are mandated. We don't, we don't own the world's feminist movement, let's say, or the CSW voices, but we do have a way of bringing voices to CSW that we need to keep doing that. So I'm really actually curious myself and looking forward to gathering with my global committee and gathering the voices. For example, we have a survey coming out. Anybody listening, please pay attention to your emails. NGO CSW will send out a survey. And it's so important that everybody answers those questions, because that's how we're going to know how to move forward, where to bring this to. And I just want to close by saying, because I know there's so many more conversations, I don't want to take up too much time. We experimented with something that I'm so proud of, and I want to say that I hope to continue. Is that from the time that we said this is opening up and it's global, we used words like collaborative, kind, inclusive, and more importantly, shared leadership model. And I'm so proud of that, because I really do think people rose up to that. I know my committee was amazing in that way. Everybody put their hands on the deck, kind of. And I hope we somehow can influence governments. I think UN is a perfect space to model that shared leadership. That's what I think UN is all about. Why not governments really pay attention to how we are succeeding as civil society with that shared leadership model, and let them join us, let them copy how we do things. So I'm just gonna end there and say, it's so good to see you, Galina, and it's so good. And please keep doing what you're doing. Bring all of your young sisters on board, because we can't do anything without the youth. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's always great to see you too.
Thank you very, very much. That was fun. Who wants to follow? Susan and or Erica and Devin, and I don't think Devin is here yet.
Devin is here. Erica's not here.
Right. Erica's not here. Okay, so Devin and Susan, the floor is yours to discuss why did your group want to organize a global group to focus on the agreed conclusion? And do you think that engaging young feminists on the CSW document is important? Why or why not? And dig down even deeper. So the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes. Thank you, Devin and Susan.
All right, so I'll start, Devin, answering those questions, and maybe Erica will appear. I don't know. She's in Santa Fe, what can I say? Anyway, those questions are so easy to answer. We can move to some hard questions. Can you imagine doing recommendations and arguing what an agreed conclusion should look like with only New York City having that conversation? That's absurd. And so what we did, we started in October, believe it or not. And so we had our global advocacy research group. And you know what? We're moving, and we're going to meet the second week in April to do a very careful analysis of the agreed conclusions and take a look at our recommendations and what we did, and did it have influence, and what should we do better next year? But so we had this wonderful, wonderful group. And I learned so much because I'd done this before, but only with a group in New York City. And so to learn from Ghana and Lebanon and Argentina and Trinidad and Tobago and Australia and Switzerland and Austria, this was so amazing. I thought I knew some things, and every once in a while, people would say things that just blew my mind and made me realize I don't know that much. Anyway, and we started with the concept note from UN Women, and we studied together and worked together to try to figure out different situations and facts about women's participation in violence against women. And then we wrapped it around human rights, making sure that we knew precedent that we could use. Then we had good practices. And that's so useful because you think you have an idea how to move forward, and then someone will name a good practice that you had never thought of. And then we did our recommendations. So what to do in the future? Well, I'm looking forward to the executive committee and us evaluating that. But I keep coming up with ideas, and then people say, well, that's not so good. Like Phumzile, the executive director of UN Women, sends a letter every year and says, countries, member states, you must put on a young person, and also you must put on someone from an NGO on your delegation. So I tried that out on some listservs, and then it was like, well, oftentimes those delegates don't know anything. Oh dear. So what do I do with that? But I must say, I'm so excited about the United States. Our new ambassador had a briefing and invited 100 of us. And we got to meet the people and to hear their ideas, to ask questions. And I think we can work with them. And that, after the 4 years of the desert and so that I'm excited about. There's a US caucus that has a meeting, a negotiating group that I think I will, that Eric and I will, or Eric is already on it, Eric and I will join. But, and I want to say one other thing, pro-US. Now, if you go to UN TV and you look at the concluding remarks and the acceptance of the agreed conclusions, it ends with the United States being quite upset at how the agreed conclusions, it's not progressive enough. Oh, did I like hearing my country say that? Because it was quite different last year. I think that's about it. I'd love to have some questions. I must say, we'll get better at global meetings, but for some people it's like midnight, and some people it's 6 in the morning. We had it good in New York because it would be like 7:30 or 8 o'clock, so in the morning. But we have to learn how to do all of that better. I'm just so pleased that NGO CSW is now 7 NGO CSWs working together, learning, struggling, celebrating together. Oh, and I love the film that Pam and whoever else did. And I love it that you included the UN orchestra, because if you look on the corner of the cello section, the person in blue playing the cello, that's me. But I love to have the celebration of Florence Price's music for CSW. That's probably enough talking. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Susan. My only question is, why was engaging young feminists and young people in the advocacy research group and in that document so significant?
Because we learned so much from them. We think we know the answers, and then if we don't listen to the young and hand the torch to them, and it's so great participating with them because they know so much. And it sort of makes older people like myself feeling, oh my goodness gracious, they're so smart and energetic. And that's good. And Devin, you look terrific after 2 weeks of what you've been through. You look like you look just so good. You must be exhausted.
Thank you so much.
More, the young need to take over, and we need to be, the olders need to be in the background, answering questions if we're asked, providing energy if we have it.
All right, thank you both so much. That was a lot of intergenerational fun. And now I'm going to actually switch hats because I'm an interviewee, and I'm going to hand the floor over to Olivia. And Olivia will be interviewing Pam and myself. So Olivia, the floor is yours, and I'm going to take another virtual seat.
Hi, everyone. So I wanted to turn now to talk about some of the anti-racism events that we had at the NGO CSW65. And so I have some questions for Pamela and Tricia. So to start off, you've helped to organize a major event on anti-racism during CSW. So what can feminists do to make sure that theme is not lost in the GEF here in Mexico?
Pam, do you want to take this one or?
No, why don't you take it?
Okay. I think there is somewhat of a bifurcation as far as this issue and a couple of other, I would say, contemporary issues are concerned, with feminism in the international development space and social justice on the streets. They seem to be sort of headed towards the same direction in theory, but in practice, they're operating in very different spheres, and the actors are different, the influencers are different, and the influencing is different. And so to that end, I think anti-racism is a symptom of a larger issue, that bifurcation exists and it actually threatens the movement overall. I think this is something that we're struggling with now. So I think the way that this conference was planned, where it was come one, come all and sundry that share our vision, even if it's not done in exactly the same way, is a major step in that direction. There's lots of layers and strata and all kinds of things that prevent people from participating, but moreover are turning people off from participating. For good or bad, social media is now the street. And this is the way people are organizing. And it's a very democratic, for good and bad, way of actually organizing. So to that end, I think that opening up the process will help quite a bit more, and it will give the process validity, or the way that we've done things that made sense in the past will go the way of the dinosaur if it doesn't change. And so anti-racism I see as the canary in the coal mine as far as the feminist movement is concerned, that there needs to be more of a wider aperture. Pam, Olivia, I hand it to you.
Thank you. I agree with you, Tricia. I think that Tricia said everything that needed to be said.
Okay. So as you mentioned, Tricia, feminist spaces in the last several years have taken, I would say, a larger step in incorporating anti-racism into their work. So I just wanted to ask, what do you think that some of the next steps can be in this work? And what do you think of the work that's been done so far?
Pam, I'll let you have that one first.
Tricia, why don't you handle that one?
Okay. I think, well, I would probably reiterate what I said before. I think that we really need to widen the aperture, and not in conferences, but in the way that we think. I mean, I had attended conferences where or panels where everyone starts off talking about the story of George Floyd, or fill in the blank person that's Black or brown in the United States. And then nobody on the panel is from the United States that's Black or brown, right? It's just like, are you being used? This is a major issue here. And even the topics of anti-racism, intersectionality, those came from people that were marginalized because of their race right here. And that social justice movement is not involved. There's a lot of elitism, and it needs to, and I'll just keep it short. It needs to go, or the movement will die. I remember when I had put together this committee, I'd asked a lot of my friends that do this work all the time. And I would say about 40 to 50% of them were like, I'm good. I mean, that's not our space, because they A, don't move fast enough, and B, they don't listen to us. We can't afford that. That's where the energy is. And so it's really hard to make that case when there's been years of the opposite. But I think this is a step in the right direction. This is an unmitigated success. Everybody knows it was a success. It was a huge risk, and it worked. And I think it's a model for moving forward. And just the juxtaposition of NGO CSW compared with CSW itself, I think it's very clear which one yielded the most energy and the better outcomes.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that women, African-American women that I know that attended the conference in 1995 in Beijing got turned off from the movement, and they no longer participate because of the racism that continues through the movement. And so what I'm hoping is that by including the anti-racism focus, that we're able to bring the women who sorely need to be included back to this space, because we've lost brilliant women who just refuse to participate.
Great, thank you. And now I just wanted to talk about one of the specific events you planned for NGO CSW. You helped produce an amazing play, Ruined, by Lynn Nottage, then conducted a discussion afterwards. Why did you want to do this? And what do you hope it contributes to our feminist and women's movement here in Mexico?
Thank you. Women, Peace, and Security, which is supporting women in conflict, is one of the major themes affecting women globally. So to commemorate the 20th anniversary of UN Security Council Resolution 1325, Susan and I got our heads together with Soon Young and FW Knapp, and we produced Lynn Nottage's Pulitzer Prize-winning play, Ruined, which examines the effect of civil conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo and what it means to women's lives. We understand that art can be used masterfully as a vehicle to bring awareness to social issues, and thought that this would be an appropriate way to address this very, very serious issue. The brutality and sexual violence affecting women in conflict is magnified in this play, as is the construct of masculinity. We hope that this production will spur conversation about sexual abuse of women in conflict and urge feminists and womanists around the globe to remember to include this as they're thinking about human trafficking and child marriage and all of the other important issues. It seems that this is one issue that's not discussed as much. And we hope that Women, Peace, and Security will be an important part of the Generation Equality Forum. Now, I'd like to ask Olivia, what do you hope to get out of the Generation Equality Forum, and why do you do what you do? Why are you here?
Yeah, thank you for that. I have to be totally honest and say that I, prior to my work with NGO CSW, didn't really have the opportunity to work with people from around the world to really engage in the global community, including in the feminist space. And I'm just so excited to be able to hear about the experience of other women, other feminists around the world, and hear about the work that's being done. And just incorporating, I think, anti-racist work and people from other cultures is so important in feminist work, and making sure that everyone is included. I'm a big supporter of the fact that feminist work is not really feminist work unless it's inclusive of all people who want to be involved.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so I'll turn it back over to Tricia. Thank you.
Well, Olivia is our interviewer, so I know Olivia had a couple more questions, and I think we've got a few more minutes. Or am I making that up?
One more question I have for you is, why was this issue included now, and how should NGO CSW move forward with it?
I think this issue was included now because the times demanded it. And this begs a question about, if you're a movement, what are you moving when the times are moving you, right? I will say that the gender equality space for Black and Brown women has been particularly hostile, and those organizations are being called out more than any other sector. And so, yes, we've done really great work as the gender equality space, but the self-congratulation is warranted, but there's also self-examination that's warranted as well. And so if we're going to be honest about including all women, then the times demanded that we do this. I think moving forward, rather than looking at this as an ancillary issue or it's nice to have, it should be front and center like it was this time. And I hope this is the beginning of something and not the end of something. I think now people are starting to talk about it more in all of these policy spaces, and that's in no small part to NGO CSW knocking down that door.
And may I add that I think that with, I think our leadership is very aware of the current political environment. When we look at the NGO community, we don't see many African-American women. We may see African, we may see Caribbean, but I think it points to the fact that the NGO community is viewed as being somewhat hostile in 2021. which really does not make much sense. And I think that we all have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
That's it. Is that it? Okay. You're the interviewer, so thank you so much. Now I'm gonna move back to where I was sitting. Imagine all this in your mind. It's gotten to the point where my imagination is now taken over as opposed to reality. And I'm gonna hand the floor over to Kayla and Rosa to have a conversation about bridging the experiences during CSW, GEF, NGO CSW, and issues that Rosa is living personally and that matter deeply to her. So Kayla and Rosa, when she gets off the phone, the floor is yours.
I'm so sorry. My computer just kind of went dull, like lower power, and I realized that I had set up like a whole NSA, bunch of panels, double computers for the Generation Equality Forum, and I left my plug over in the other room. So my son was sweet enough to rush over and bring it to me so I don't just disappear off the Zoom. All right, thank you, Joaquin. All right.
Okay, I'm glad you're here now. But yes, so it's so nice to speak here. And just to get this started, I'm curious, Rosa, if you can expand a little bit on your experiences and your specific role during CSW, and how the work done there all connects to what's going to be going on during GEF.
Okay, how much time do we have?
I know, it's a loaded question.
Thank you so much for that loaded question, Kayla. Well, first of all, let me just say that it's been a privilege to work with you all as an executive committee member of the NGO CSW. There's one role that I had very close to the work of the NGO CSW Forum, the work of the status of women. Equally, as the Feminist Task Force Director, the Feminist Task Force is a co-convener of the Women's Working Group on Financing for Development. This is an alliance of women, feminist organizations, and allies who follow the financing for development process at the UN. Now, the Women's Working Group is also a co-lead for the Economic Justice and Rights Action Coalition, which falls under the Generation Equality initiative. So I've been doing dual roles, and also within the Commission on the Status of Women, working with the coalition that is also following the negotiations. So how do they relate? Well, we know that, Huri alluded to this, she mentioned it earlier. I think that the work that has been done since Beijing on an annual basis for the Commission on the Status of Women has been, sort of plodding along and in a sense getting stuck in the fulfillment of these commitments because of the annual commission process, and how difficult it has become. And we witnessed that again this year in the negotiation of the agreed outcomes at the commission. So we knew that we needed another forum, another place to really energize women and have that transformative space, time, forum to propel the new generation of young women, to energize the older yet young at heart generation that Pam mentioned. But there was also this dialogue, sometimes bitter debate about Do we want a 5th conference on women? Can we have that in this atmosphere, this very kind of tense, divided political atmosphere? In a sense, yes, the answer was no, we can't. So what does generation equality do? Generation equality has taken this process of women's rights, gender equality, kind of to the side, but front and central in a sense, really focusing on champion countries who can take this further. So the generation equality, it's not 193 countries who are behind this. It's really certain champion countries who have been there with us. And it's not only looking at, you know, Beijing plus 25, it's also looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. It's looking at the SDGs and what can we get by 2030. So the part of that is these action coalitions, which are really focused on, 5 years from now. Okay, so it's intensely how can we work within these certain areas, 6 areas, for the next 5 years. And the generation equality is looking like towards alongside and in complement with the SDG process. So that's kind of an overview. I don't know if I left out other things, but let me just say one thing that I was thinking of just now when you mentioned this question. COVID, okay? So COVID, in a sense, we know it's regressed, so much for women. And I can cite examples, but the generation equality, the 25th anniversary, now it's 25 plus 1 anniversary of the Beijing conference, in a sense comes at a really good time. I'm not going to say that COVID is good, no, but it comes at a time when we need to redouble our efforts because we are really on the cusp, whether, go forward or we really go way, way, way backwards. And just this morning, my colleague, Bhumika, sent me this email about her organization, the Third World Network, about acute hunger set to rise in 20 countries. And we knew this. We knew when COVID hit a year ago, and in the financing for development process, when they were measuring the setbacks on this, there was an ambassador there at that moment a year ago who said, we will probably have more people die of hunger than of COVID down the line when we see this hitting. So who are the main food producers? Women and girls, and doing all the work. So I think that right now with generation equality, with the action coalitions, even in this incredible turnout for the CSW NGO, it is really a time to push forward and have that transformative experience, even if it's online, and really try to change the situation for women.
Thank you for expanding on that. I know that was a really loaded question. You explained everything very well. I think we are a little bit limited on time for our portion of this.
Well, then can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because I think that, just seeing the diversity here, and the youth involved, I think it's, youth are really key. And let me just put it simply, like, why do you think that youth need to be involved right now? You can do it at, personal level or just, overall. I'm really interested in your opinion and the others as well.
Yeah. I think Susan was touching on this a little bit earlier. And for me, I think it's always going to be that question always kind of comes back to like listening to others. And in this kind of sense, we're speaking about intergenerational conversations, but that can apply to any kind of situation where whether you learn from somebody across the board on any kind of different intersectionality. And I think bringing young voices to spaces where a lot of the times people are required to have such and such years of experience, or perhaps they're typically viewed as people who don't have enough life experience, when in reality, they actually have these very raw kind of perspectives that you won't necessarily get at, say, the UN level. There are tons and tons of teenagers right now, I think more than ever, I would say, doing really crazy grassroots kind of advocacy, whether it's in digital spaces now during this time, or just literally on the streets. And I think learning from those kinds of people and those kinds of youth voices and bringing them to spaces like this, where there is so much power, there is so much, just space is what it really is. And giving youth opportunity to be in these spaces, I think, is so vital now more than ever, with everything going on with COVID and living in digital worlds now.
Wow, that is such a great answer, honestly. I mean, that sense of what you said, about the raw, reactions, that is so powerful, because that's what motivates, And just to thank you so much for that. Just a quick little anecdote. I think I've mentioned this in a meeting, but my daughter is 17 years old, and I took her to the first CSW when she was 13. Just feeling your way around. But this year, it kind of came full circle. She participated in the working group on girls, conversation circle on girls, as a rapporteur, a facilitator. I mean, it's just kind of incredible, because she pretty much did it on her own with a friend, of course. Right. But, if I push her, but it's that rawness. It's just like that desire. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. And I guess we can give it back to Trisha if we're running out of time.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Thank you so much. I love the intergenerational, and you know what, Rosa, you're absolutely right. You mentioned how diverse this was. This feels normal for a lot of what my experience has been in NGO CSW, at least in terms of the people on calls. And so you don't realize how strange that is outside of the space. And so thank you for holding that space, and thank you for always being mindful of that. All right, so our penultimate panel, I guess, a mini panel, is Safira, Saida, and you're going to have a conversation where we eavesdrop on YLYP. And you've got 10 minutes, and pretend that nobody's here. Just ignore all of the squares. And it's just the three of you reflecting on your experience and what you want to see for the future. So the floor is yours, Devin, Saida, and Safira. Thank you.
Thank you, Trisha. So I am going to ask Safira and Saida some questions. So the first one that I want to start out with is a basic question, but I think it's really fundamental and important. So Safira and Saida, why is it so important to have this YLYP community and to continue building upon it?
You want to take that, Safira?
Sure, I can start, and then Saida, please jump in. It's been a really interesting journey for the Youth Leaders and Young Professionals program, particularly since COVID began and this past year as we've been transitioning our meetings online. And it feels like just the momentum that has been generated and the numbers of young people that have been joining us on these online calls. We've been kind of having these every week for the 8 weeks in the lead up to the Commission on the Status of Women. We've been having a weekly call to really try to build this network of young people who are really thinking about each other and who can, develop a network to support one another. Because it can feel at times that certain spaces for young people, whether it's at the national level or at the international level, they can feel at times a little bit tokenistic or a little bit insincere. And which is why, and to Devon's question, this it's so important to have this space for youth leaders and young professionals to really share authentically and sincerely, not only their perspective, but also these are some incredible young people that are really moving things at the grassroots and are connected to whole movements of young people that are working towards gender equality and are doing some really pivotal acts of service on the ground. So to be able to have them come to a space where they can connect and share and really support one another's work and build these meaningful friendships and meaningful relationships that then enhance what they're doing has probably been a real highlight for me in terms of being part of this network, and also just to see the reaction of how helpful and how supported young people have felt in the space as they've been accompanied to engage with the UN for the first time. So I think it's really important to have these spaces that feel sincere and authentic and genuine, and are really listening and really trying to incorporate young people's perspectives and the actions that young people are taking. I don't know, Saeed, if you have anything else to add.
I think you covered it beautifully. Thank you, Safira.
Thank you so much, Safira. Yeah, I think that really covers, everything that we are trying to do and everything that we're seeing happen as we're developing this program. And why is it important and significant to bring young feminists from outside of the UN space to our YLYPs and the CSW?
Yeah, I can take that. I think we all know why it's important. I mean, there really is no moving forward in a sustainable manner if anyone is left behind. So we need to ensure that all voices are included in these processes, and particularly young people specifically who have been historically marginalized and institutionally removed from these processes are actually involved in the planning and the implementation and execution of policies and programs that will affect their lives. But more importantly, there's no excuse left anymore. Like, their one silver lining of the pandemic has been that it's given this virtual space more validity than it ever held before. We had so many different challenges that young people faced with before, from having access to visas to simply funding regarding how will they access these fancy spaces in New York, in Geneva, in London. But that can't be the excuse anymore. We can access these spaces in a virtual manner. You could be sitting at one corner of the world and be dialing in on the other corner of the world. And that's not to say, obviously, that the digital divide doesn't exist. That's a very real problem, and we need to continue addressing it and challenging governments and organizations to continue supporting young people to overcome the digital divide. But now we have these virtual spaces available for young people to participate virtually from anywhere in the world. So we need to continue building on this one silver lining of the pandemic and ensure that moving forward, these spaces of power continue to be systematically and institutionally and structurally inclusive of young people.
Wow, perfect answer, great answer. Safira, did you want to add anything else? Okay, cool. And then the last question I have is, now that CSW is over and we've, went through our awesome preparation series, and we have built this community of young people, and we see this, and it's really exciting. But where do we go from here? How do we build off of the momentum and the passion of the YLYPs that we're seeing? Like, what are some of our visions for what we want to see going into the future?
I can start, and Safira and Devon, feel free to join me. And when you say vision, like, I have so many ideas because we attended such incredible sessions and there were so many young people with so many exciting thoughts and ideas. But then I keep also going back to what Safira said about tokenistic representation. And here with the YLYP community, we have, as our position as co-chairs, a respective privilege in terms of what we plan on and can implement with this programming. But we don't want to decide that on our own. We want to keep turning back to our youth partners, keep turning back to this youth network that we built in the past year and ask them what they want to get out of this network, what they want to get out of these resources that we have available. They need from us to keep this momentum going. So when I'm thinking about my vision, I'm trying to rein it in a little bit and think about how we can move to the next steps and get in terms of getting feedback from our YLYP members and our youth partners, and getting a sense of what they would like to see from us. So that's where my thought process is.
Maybe just to build a little bit on what Saida has shared too, you know, we went into this kind of really thinking how we can support young people and build capacity in young people to be able to be effective at the UN. And so things that we've scheduled were, you know, very much around UN advocacy training and presentation skills, which all were really helpful in terms of giving young people tools to be effective in the UN system. But I think also what was demonstrated so clearly is that young people have capacity, like they are ready to speak, they're ready to input into like documents, they're ready to negotiate on language, they're ready, they're researching, they're so enthusiastic and so active. And so something that I would really like to see as we move forward is to really open space as much as we can, both on our platform, but then also to find space at the UN where just this immense capacity and this reservoir of talent and energy can really be used for some really incredible impact. And I understand that that's something also that the Generation Equality Forum is trying to do in terms of harnessing like the energy of young people and having them integrated into the forum. So I'd really love to see more of that happen throughout the course of the coming year.
Thank you both so much. And I just want to highlight, Ivy just posted in the chat that the ECOSOC Youth Forum is taking place next week. So that's an event to put on your calendars. Yeah, thank you so much. And I will pass it back to Trisha.
Am muted. This is really a metaphor for everything. I feel like I say that 90 times. I'm just going to do a slight departure because I know that Sun Young has amazing visuals for us, and I'd like for us to end with those visuals. And Lois and Zone are here, both of which are members of Civil Society Advisory Group. And maybe if you could just give 1 minute, because we're really running tight, but we just wanted you to be able to turn on your cameras, say hello, and share in brief what you're doing. And this may call for actually another Zoom where we focus on the work in Africa. So Zone and Lois, a minute, you've got it. Floor is yours. Or
super. Okay, thank you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Can you see me? It's almost dark here. Okay. Yeah, so basically we've been following the GEF program in groups and from the office. And it's really been, I would say, learning, because this is the first time I think the world, everyone is like connecting online, because past events we've always have like the option of being physically present and online present. But so far, I would share from my own experience and with my constituencies who have it's like yesterday was a challenging day for almost everyone in my constituency, like assessing the 3D of it was beautiful, but then knowing that you have to click on those icons to get to a session was a bit challenging, but they sorted it out. We tried to sensitize, quickly, and they sorted it out. So far, it's good. And I don't know if there is more information you want from me in terms of my personal appraisal or what exactly.
No, it's just kind of a say hello. We'll see a lot of Zone tomorrow. So
okay,
because I've strong-armed her into doing 3 different things tomorrow. So I owe you one. Lois, you have 30 seconds if you want to say something, and then we must move on to Sun Young. Thank you so much for your understanding. You're on mute as well.
Lois, unmute. Now she's frozen.
No, she's frozen. Okay. I'm so sorry. We're going to have to move on. Okay, well, Ivy, the floor is yours to interview Sun Young, one of the organizers of the NGO Forum in Beijing. And we will hear from them about what they see as the connection between CSW and Beijing
Hello.
+25.
Okay, sorry. Hello.
Yes, yes. 30 seconds, please. I don't think this is meant to be. Okay. Well, yes, Lois, please put your comments in the chat. And as I was saying, they will speak about Sun Young and Ivy, the connection between CSW and Beijing +25 from Mexico, Paris, and beyond. And they've been involved in this for a while, so I'm going to sit back and let them do what they do. And Sun Young has some really amazing visuals to share with us as well. And I think that will be a fantastic way to close what we've been doing. So Sun Young, Ivy, the floor belongs to you.
Yes, thank you, Trisha. So basically, Sun Young, I actually want to see your visuals, but you were in the NGO Forum in Beijing, and we want to understand what you think are the connections between CSW, Beijing +25, Paris, Mexico, and beyond.
My job is to connect the dots. So let me just tell you first what I was doing at the NGO Forum. We were 30 some people in New York office with a shared space, but we have this counterpart in China called the All China Women's Federation, which is the largest women's NGO in the world because they at the time covered every NGO in China. And I was responsible for the NGO inputs into the Beijing Platform for Action, and also for coordinating some of the amazing regional planning committees. The NGO CSW New York at the time had a really important role. And I think some of you may not know this history, but along with Vienna and Geneva, under the Conference of NGOs and the leadership of Roz Harris, we were actually involved in planning the NGO Forum in Beijing collectively. There were 3 different layers of organizers, and the NGO CSW New York was really part of that at the time. We were given 6 months when China changed the venue from near Beijing to all those, they said, put those crazy women in this village of Huairu, as someone from the South should say, Huairu, so that they can't get to us because we know they're going to throw off their bras and run around the fountain near there and embarrass the entire country. So 6 months, what did we feel like? I think we felt like the last 2 weeks of CSW. I think people need to remember that NGO CSW is almost all volunteers. Huri, Rosa, the executive committee. And what we feel like when we organize these huge events, I think we're inspired, but I think the metaphor that I always used to tell my group when we get really discouraged, there are these moments in history when if you are not there, every one of you, things don't happen. So we become, in the women's movement, some of us become bridges, and we allow others to cross from one moment to another. That is how we felt in Beijing. I think that's how everyone feels at some point when they go through an intense experience of organizing groups. And in that process, we get trampled on a lot. I mean, really a lot, because they're stepping over us to get there, and they're really in a hurry. So I think afterwards, we need to feel really good that we played that role in that moment of history. And clearly we needed that the last 2 weeks. And we need that going forward with a GEF. GEF, which is an experiment, figuring it out as you go along, I know, Rosa. But in some ways, GEF, although you look like leaders, in some ways, at some point, you become the bridge. And you become the bridge for the rest of civil society and the next generation that we've been hearing from to cross the other side. What I also realized from my experience is that we have to go back and resist the temptation of thinking that women are better than men because of our biology. We have to go back to the fact that it is from our experience of inequality that we deserve to and are better qualified to govern. And the metaphor I was thinking of is we were thrown at the bottom of a well by patriarchy, and they're just drawing the water out endlessly, thinking that it's a bottomless well. But we are there and we can see that the earth is in trouble, the water is drying up, and we look around and we see that there are others at the bottom with us, which is why we understand, I think, inequality so well. We understand the climate injustice so well, and we understand the crisis of food security that Rosa was talking about. We're at the bottom of the well. We understand, feel, and can understand other inequalities, which is why we are better. The world is better when we govern. And we saw that through COVID. I saw a statistic, saying there were fewer deaths when there was women's leadership, both at the top and at the bottom, and all of that. So going forward to GEF, it's my hope that GEF remains very creative, that it continually evolves, and that it figures out a way to get us out of the well, all of us, at the same time, jumping out, celebrating, throwing water over ourselves, saying that we are in a land of plenty of goodwill and equality. And I have the privilege of introducing Ivy Kirk, who has also been this bridge for the last 3 years, 4 years. Ivy, how long have you been with NGO CSW?
I was thinking like it's been 6 or 7 now.
There you are, okay. So have you ever felt like people were trampling over you and trying to get to the other side? And what is your hope for GEF, like as you look forward?
My hope is, and I want to draw on what happened during CSW and during our NGO forum really quickly, because I thought that, what was so beautiful about that space was we really took a big risk in opening that space to a huge community of what ended up being 25,000 participants. And we had Zoom meetings as well as webinars, which allowed people to chat and then also turn on videos and talk sometimes and break out into groups and conversation circles and do these yoga spaces and open their mics and say hello and goodbye at the end. And that community building I thought was just so beautiful. And I think that it's easy to want to close the space because we want to protect each other and make it a safe environment. But then I wonder in this virtual space, if then we just isolate ourselves even further. And I don't know, like the fear holding us back, is that a good thing? Like, should we always be so super cautious? I'm really questioning this because the GEF, I would have hoped for a little bit more interaction. And I think it would have been an even more rich experience if, even though, I know that the hurdles of making that happen on a virtual space and the risks of it, but is it worth it? Or, I just really, this has kind of been coming through my mind the last day or two. So I just wanted to bring that up. But I did like that about the NGO forum space, even with all of the issues and it wasn't a lot actually, very small, very few issues overall, over 700 events. We took that step to try and bridge and connect through this virtual space. And I thought that was a phenomenal challenge that we took on. And I thought in that sense, we were successful because we tried the experiment.
Experiment turns out to be a really good way to go with the times, I am happy to listen to Lois if she has something to say about GEF. Is she online again?
Lois, are you here? I don't see. Oh, there you are. I think she's frozen though. Yeah.
Again, okay, so sorry. Maybe she
It's
can
not
put
a good.
something in the chat for us to see.
She has. So feel free to proceed.
All right, okay. Shall I screen share and show our finale here?
Yeah, go for it.
So these are about 2 online books, but it was something
Hello,
that
sorry. I wasn't sure I had my. I wasn't sure I was the one whose name was mentioned. So I'll use this opportunity to say this whole GEF process is a real eye-opening and a great experience to be part. Been following the discussions and then also reflecting on how we could be able to share this information with the feminist and women's rights community in Ghana and Africa, and engaging them to be part of this whole process. So it is not only about being here, but getting the whole movement to also join in with this opportunity. So I see that it's just the beginning. Fine, it's been challenging getting to maneuver our way through this 3GD because there isn't much information on what to do when you get here. But I think that everything starts from somewhere. I will also want to share our experience with CSW, and I will say that we being part of the whole process. For my organization, for instance, we had a parallel session where we were able to get the other women's rights to join in our session, and also to share other sessions that were happening elsewhere for them to also participate. And it has brought that kind of awakening. You know, initially CSW was in person. So once you don't go to UN, US, you are not privy to what happens at CSW. But for the first time that we gone virtual, it made everybody appreciate what really happens at CSW. Though we had on IT challenges, I think that is still better than when we had no, opportunity to even get to know what it is about, and then what the future, what the resolutions are and the conclusions. Even in my organization, our partners are asking that we repeat the side events that we held at CSW in Ghana at a national level for more discussions on violence against women, political participation, which I felt that is a very good start. And so I'm very happy with this, and I want to congratulate all the leadership for pulling this together, and want to encourage that we still have lots of work doing, but we still holding the fort as we are discussing. Thank you,
Lois, that
Thank
was
you,
great.
Lois.
Shall I roll?
You should roll.
Sorry. Let's find it. Let me share the screen properly here. Oops, are we not finding it? Are we seeing it?
Yes.
Now the question is, can we hear it? I was one of the organizers of the NGO Forum in Beijing 26 years ago. I'm here with Tanya Silverado, and we are here to talk about 2 books. The first is My Memories and Messages for the Next Generation. This is open for registration today for those who attended the UN 4th World Conference on Women. And if you weren't there, we have a second book, My Issues, Hopes, and Dreams. And this is for all the young artists, musicians, writers who would like to contribute something on their issues, hopes, and dreams. Here is the opening of the NGO Forum. We had 30,000 people at the forum, 20,000 over at the UN meeting. This is at the stadium. We could only fit 10,000 there, but it was a wonderful beginning. Over at the NGO Forum in Huairu, we had wonderful tents, and each of the tents meant something. We had tents for the regions, we had a youth tent, we had a peace tent, and we had tents for Indigenous people. We were in the mud a lot, but there was a lot of energy there and wonderful things happening. one of the wonderful things that happened for me was the emergence of certain themes. Beijing Women's Conference was very important because we acknowledged that all issues are women's issues. That includes, very importantly now, the issues which are the crises of our times, which includes climate justice, inequalities, and the COVID pandemic recovery. We also had a Beijing Platform for Action adopted by 189 countries, including most of yours. And we, to this day, hold this document up as the golden standard of policy for gender equality and women's empowerment. Another very important theme that emerged from this conference was unity with diversity. Here, from the right to the left, you see Peggy Anthropos from Jamaica, you see Roxana Carrero from Peru, Nolene Hazer from Malaysia, and of course, the very famous human rights defender, Charlotte Bunch from the US. Culture was a really important part of the Beijing conference messaging. This project called Global Focus is now archived in the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, DC. Women sent 9 by 11, as I recall, inch pieces of work that were then made into a very, very beautiful installation in Beijing. Weaving the World's Women, the unity of women, was symbolized by this project where women from all over the world wove pieces to a certain dimension, put together by the Cambodian women, and then we took this piece to the Great Wall. I think what's preoccupied me the most is what happened afterwards. And one of the great stories I have about that is a group in San Francisco led by my friend Krishanti Demaraj, who decided that in order to do something after Beijing, they wanted to do something at home in San Francisco. And they were able to bring this UN Women's Human Rights Treaty, which we call the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, to San Francisco. And San Francisco became, in 1998, the first city in the world to adopt a UN Human Rights Treaty as a legally binding city ordinance. To this day, that has had an impact so that we have now more than 50 cities in the US which have adopted CEDAW. That was the Beijing Women's Conference impact in the US. In the rest of the world, you can see it as well. Let me introduce now Tanya Silverado. She's a film producer, actor, and author of many books. She's going to talk a little bit, if she wants, about her latest. But let's talk first about what happened in Beijing. So Tanya, welcome.
Hi, Sun-Yang.
Do you remember who this is?
Of course, I remember Supatra very well.
What was she doing there? Remind us.
She was the main convener of the NGO Forum.
I think she went on to become Minister of Environment or something back in Thailand afterwards.
Yes, she did hold government office afterwards.
Yeah. And who's this?
That is the beautiful team. I'm sad I'm not in that photo.
Yeah, I was almost going to Photoshop you in.
Okay. And now, I love seeing your dog.
Well, in fact, what I can say here is that this was a pretty small team working in a shared space.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't look like we could ever handle 30,000 people. But in fact, our great advantage, remember the All China Women's Federation?
Yes, of course.
So because they were there, we were able to manage this. And because the entire conference was under the office of the Prime Minister of China, so many resources went into this from their side. Do you remember this Durga at the very end of the office?
Yes, I do remember it. I remember that office very well. You know, there were 30 of us, I think, in that office, and it was so full of joy.
It was most of the time, but then we all looked like this when towards the end, like Durga. And who's this?
That is me looking very fabulous and wild.
And what were you doing in Beijing? What was your role? Tell us about it.
So I helped coordinate the youth tent. It was, I believe, the first time that hundreds, more than 1,000 young people came to one of these international women's conferences. And we organized a youth tent, myself and Zoni Woods. And I was specifically in charge of producing youth arts and culture events, which was a beautiful experience. We put on a big concert for a lot of people at the main theater in Huairou, and it was packed. I just remember it was packed, and we had performers from the Philippines and Norway and Berkeley, California. And I was amazed at how we put it together because it was really kind of early days of the internet. So much of our communication was done by fax. And it was the first really large event I had produced, and it somehow went off without a hitch. And it just makes me think, like, there was somebody watching over us that allowed so much of this impossible work to happen.
So what was your most memorable moment in the conference in general? Like, was there a time when you were scared, when you were happy?
Well, I'll start with the time that I was not scared, but concerned. And I think I was the only person on the organizing committee who actually spoke Chinese. Is that correct?
You're right. You're right.
And so when we were in China itself, and I had already been to China multiple times before, first in 1987, I went as a high school student and I lived in Harbin in the north of China. And because I was the only one who spoke Chinese on our side, I was often brought in to intervene, to be an interlocutor between the Chinese organizing side and our side. And I found that many of the disconnects and disagreements were because people just didn't understand each other.
That's very, very true. Very true.
It really was true. And of course, I could see how each side was really struggling to communicate with each other. And I just think it is so important and valuable for people to learn each other's language, and if not, to have really great interpreters to be the go-between. Because so that, you know, there was a lot of friction, and that was unfortunate because I felt like a lot of the friction could have been avoided. But then my favorite memory was just like the friendships that I made, including with you, that have lasted to today. And also my favorite naughty moment is when a bunch of the younger ones snuck away from the main campus and we went to a local disco. and we kind of snuck in and people told us to be careful. But then of course, once we got there, we saw there's like a whole subculture that was going on.
Which is much freer than what we thought was happening at the official conference.
Yeah, there were totally like people dancing and hanging out and wearing what they want. And so that was really fun for me to experience. And then yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I want to know how the conference, if it affected you personally in some way, as you grew and became this famous person.
Well, I wouldn't say I became a famous person, but the conference dovetailed timing wise at a juncture in my life when I was really figuring out my path. And being at the conference and being amongst thousands of women from all over the world, and back then also non-binary women, although we didn't have that term then, and learning from them and partying with them and marching with them and protesting with them completely shaped the trajectory of my life. It is the single most influential factor on the choices that I've made since then. And it also resulted in many positions that I've held after the Women's Conference, because that's what led to my work with the Ms. Foundation, my continuing work with you for the World Health Organization, and on and on and on and on and on.
And talk a little bit about your latest book.
My book is called Assume Nothing, A Story of Intimate Violence. It is a difficult subject, but one that I know will do a lot of good. It is the story of my own experience in an abusive relationship with the former New York State Attorney General, and how I got out and got agency over my life, my body, and also my narrative. And the book provides lots of resources for people to spot, stop, and prevent intimate partner violence in their own lives. And I'm excited that the book is being turned into a television series. It's been optioned by ABC Signature Disney Television with Joanna Coles executive producing. And that is really wonderful because it means that the message of the book will reach a larger audience.
What a wonderful bookend to the Beijing conference. We are so proud of you, Tanya. I, by mistake, actually went to the next slide, but then here we are. We have Fatima Kafaji, who is the co-convener of the Arab States Feminist Network and founder of the Alliance for Arab Women. And Fatima, just before I came with you, I found these slides. Were you at the Amman regional meeting? Could you unmute yourself and talk to us a little bit?
Yes, yes, I was in the preparatory meeting of CSOs in Amman, and that was like some sort of a smaller rehearsal of what is going to happen in Beijing, but only for a region. So I can imagine, you know, for so many regions of the world, how it looked like. So it was really, for me, it was the first time to attend such a big Arab convention with, you know, civil society organizations, government, women from academia, all the Arab countries were there preparing themselves to Beijing 95. So it was really quite an experience.
You've not seen this picture. Who are these people? Go from left. Isn't that Haifa? To the left?
Yes, Haifa. We meet until now because she's in the Arab League, and Emily Nafa, the greatest Jordanian feminist and lawyer,
and who's that?
And politician. And this is my mother.
And what is her name?
Huda Badran, who was with Haifa, actually, they selected chairs of two important CSOs, my mother from Egypt and Haifa from Jordan, to sort of galvanize and organize all the activities of the women and feminist NGOs in the region before Beijing and in Beijing and after Beijing.
So what was your favorite memory of Beijing? Here you are.
My favorite memory, it was actually, it was nice to be 3 generations from one family in Beijing because I had to take my son, who was I think 12 or 13 years old, because
Is that him?
That's him, yeah. So he was, and I was really afraid that he wouldn't like, and then he would tell me, no, I want to go home the second day, but he just loved it. He immersed himself in everything we do, especially in the Arab tent, organizing paintings for painters, doing the cultural activities, find other young women from some Arab countries his age and doing things on their own, and to the extent that he didn't want to leave. When we had to leave after 2 weeks or so, he said, no, you leave, I'm staying here. So it was so nice being together sometimes, because each of us had to do different things, but come together at night in the Arab tent, organizing the cultural events and attending it and networking with other women from other regions. So it was really fun.
So tell me, did this particular experience influence you and the work you did since then? Or were you like that before you went?
No, I think it influenced me a lot because I was so impressed and so immersed in discussions around the 12 concerns of Beijing Platform of Action. And to me, it was like, you know, the first feminist manifesto that I see so powerful. To the extent because I was working, you know, when I was in Beijing and Jordan at UNICEF. And when I came back, I told my boss, who was also with the UNICEF delegation in Beijing, I want to work with 150 women and feminist CSOs from Egypt. And we want that, you know, they decide like 10 or 20 of them, which concern they would like to work on. And then we come together. So actually for years and years, we took our manifesto, which is the Beijing Platform of Action, and more than 150 civil society have worked on each concern, and then also coming together to discuss the whole picture. And that was the most enjoyable work I've ever done, actually.
Amazing. And what about your mother? Did she tell you her experience?
I think my mother really liked this experience there, because I think, I mean, she was also networking very well with the official delegations. So they really have put the voice of the Arab women on the agenda so powerful. And it was, I mean, she always says, like, if you really want to influence things, then also no matter how governments are conservative and so on, but we have to find a way to break through. So I think, I mean, so many lessons that she confirmed to herself there, and she sort of advocated all the time and still does, actually.
Wonderful. So you have 3 generations there. Have you contributed to the book?
I did. I thought, you know, the issue of having 3 generations in Beijing could be of interest to some. So I thought I wanted to write about it and what we were doing there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Fatima. So we will now turn to a conversation with Jillian Montilla, who won the first prize, the FW MAP, our Feminist Women's Movement Action Plan Poetry Contest for UN Women at 10. But I'll give the floor to Tanya, who is going to be able to talk with her. I'm actually going to stop sharing our screen here and let them take over.
Thank you, Sun-Young. And hi, Jillian.
Hello, Tanya. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have a conversation with you. Well, first of all, congratulations on your award.
Thank you very much.
Very exciting. So Jillian is a spoken word poet. She's also a student of human rights and humanitarian action. And I'm so grateful about your work because you are the future. So thank you. We're going to dive into some questions, and then we're going to close the session by hearing you read your poetry, which is wonderful. So what would you say, as a young feminist writer, what are the biggest challenges to getting your work heard and in general?
Of course, so I think that one of the hardest things is beginning and finding our authentic voice. After years of apologizing and minimizing and censoring ourselves, it can be difficult to feel legitimate while sharing your voice. And when you do, everyone has feedback on both the form or the delivery and content and substance, what we have to say. Don't rock the boat, too emotional, too cold, no one will take you seriously. And what we're left with is this stitched together Frankenstein of what we originally wanted to say. So I think it's really feeling inspired and feeling safe and brave enough to begin. And also trusting ourselves and the authenticity of our experiences and the value of our experiences.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, it's something that I have definitely encountered as well as an old feminist writer. Authenticity is so important. And it makes me think of this book called Writing a Woman's Life by Carolyn Heilbrunn, where she talks about the stories that women didn't tell, and how some of them actually then went back and retold their stories because they regretted not having
represented their authentic selves. So thank you for your authenticity. Now, how do you think the United Nations can help with regard to the obstacles we discussed?
The UN has incredible reach and incredible influence in norm setting. So I think it can do two things. First, underline the importance and the necessity of arts in affecting the cultural and social sphere when it comes to achieving gender equality. And though I'm not advocating that plenary sessions in the General Assembly be set up like a slam poetry open mic, what I'm saying is that the UN has an incredible role in enlarging what we imagine as civil and political participation. So by actively promoting the arts, poetry, movies, storytelling, and promoting young talent, maybe not fully formed, but full of potential, I think we can begin rehumanizing the way we connect with each other, person to person, state to state, while simultaneously increasing the visibility of our most underrepresented voices. As well as, I think the second thing that the UN can do is invest in community building, create more meeting places for us to meet our peers, sisters, and mentors that can support us in reaching our goals. So forums like this, for example.
Yeah, and I think it's not a bad idea to have a slam poetry session as part of the General Assembly.
Might pick things up a little bit.
Yeah. Now, last question. What advice do you have for young artists who want to incorporate art and activism into their lives?
I think that I wanted to originally say that we lack the resources to have voices be put out there, but as we see how quickly things can go viral on TikTok, on social media, maybe that's not the thing. I think what the thing is that we don't find value in our lived experiences. We don't find ourselves legitimate to begin with. So finding value in the way that we trip up on our words, the ways that we want to tell the way that we've experienced discrimination, the ways that we've overcome it, and sharing that in the ways that feel most comfortable to us, whether that be graphic design, whether it be through filming or painting or writing poetry, but just putting yourself out there. I remember when I started first submitting poetry, I would send the email, close my laptop, and like run away and just pretend that I never even did it in the first place. But it was only recently that I started sharing it even directly with my network, with my friends, and most people didn't even really know that I wrote poetry to begin with. And I think we have to be less afraid of claiming our voice and our vision and the way that we see the world, and because it's important, it's valuable, and it's legitimate to begin with. So.
Well, I'm so grateful that you have shared your poetry with the world and that you are now going to share it with us. So just briefly introduce the poem. I am going to turn my video off and we're going to close it out by hearing your beautiful words. So thank you, Jillian, for this conversation.
Thank you, Tanya. So this is a piece called Mama Told Me. Being first generation Filipino American, I have so much admiration for what my parents had gone through as new immigrants into the United States. And so this is pretty much just a conversation between a negotiation within myself, with my new country, and with my mother as well. So Mama told me. When Mama arrived here, she told me to ask you, let me learn your language. Allow me to bend my tongue to the shape of the airwaves, doublespeak, deliberately euphemistic, submissively nationalistic, tick, vocabulary acquired, shoot, accent not yet retired. Will my name be the reason I am not hired? No, it can't be. This is the land of universal rights, right? Where you and I and they and them are equal before the eyes of the state, but how it casts that gaze, it makes me shrink. It makes me feel so very... Mama told me to ask you. Let me learn your language that condemns me threat and you hero, that casts me victim and you savior. I mean that graciously, bravely brands my vulnerability for what it is, deserving of protection. Let me learn your language so when I have the chance, I can tell you what you want to hear. I can be token of diversity, globalization incarnate. I can tell you that everything is fine, but as I learn your language, as I read how the papers paint me broad brushstrokes of brown and red, I see it's more than words and grammar, syntax and sayings. I see that you are afraid of a world that speaks like me, looks and loves like me. I see that you want and everything is fine, girl. I see that you are questioning our world and your place in it. Well, so am I. Hi, nice to meet you. Let's begin with my fears. Easy, public speaking, heights and spiders. Now my favorite things, coffee, no milk, the first hint of spring, a good laugh with friend or stranger. We're not too different after all. It's nice to meet you. Let us learn a new language. Free our tongue from the sharp yoke of stilted speech that puts frontier before potential friend, that has starched stiff our words from the frivolity of passion along with its dress shirt collar. Deliver us into softer syllables, true connection, finding warmth in the maxim of the golden rule, rolling out respect like a beach towel, relearning ever kinder vowels. Let us learn a new language that weaves our from the silken thread of you and me. Let us learn a new language where I too can be cast hero, where I too can arrange these words to tell my story of my fear of the lowest lows and love for the highest highs. Let us learn a new language where we can laugh together, where we can share coffee together, where we can sit in a park and enjoy the first brush of a premature spring upon our cheek together. But before we wring out our tongues from the acid that soaks them, lay them out to dry crinkly in the same sun. You must know you cannot befriend a metaphor, an idea, a one-column op-ed of what you've learned. I am not here to insist my mother's humanity, my dreamer friend's dignity. That was never up for debate. I am here because something larger than my fear has spoken, and it said it's time for a change. I am here to learn and to help you learn a new language that writes us both human, a new language not yet written. We are here to learn and write together, just like my mama really asked of us. Thank you.
Wow. Wow, what a way to end. Are you okay, Sun Young? What a way to end. Trisha,
Yeah.
What do you think? I don't know what's happening with Sun Young.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think probably let's just end on those words. There's really nothing else that can be said. And I thank you all for this wasn't a panel, this was a fellowship. And I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to participate in this handing off of the baton in so many different ways, in so many different forms. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day. Please make sure to visit the exhibit booth. We've called it Feminists. We've now called it Civil Society Advisory because that's what we are. We've gotten down to brass tacks, and there are lots of documents and videos and all sorts of things that you can use for your own work, organized by country, organized by theme. So walk around in our virtual library, open what you need to open, use what you need to use. This is a space for sharing and share in the chat. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at the conference. Thank you all very much.
Yes. Oh yeah, we should definitely take a photo quickly.
Oh yes.
Also, Trisha is right. We have so many incredible documents and videos in our folders in the Global and North America. Please visit that. Okay, who wants to do the photo? I'll try. I'm not.
You can go ahead and do it. I'm notorious for terrible pictures.
I am the worst. Okay.
Devin and Kayla, show
I
your
know.
faces.
I know. Okay. It's okay. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Everybody unmute.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.